I am Erin Malden, 31 years old woman. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and last year I finalized a divorce that took everything from me except the settlement. But what my sister did with that money shattered more than my marriage. It made me question every memory we ever shared. What happened next changed everything. The last time I saw my ex-husband, he was standing in the driveway of our old house, arms crossed over the hood of his Audi like he was posing for a real estate ad. He didn't say goodbye, just handed over the manila envelope, tapped the roof twice, and drove off without looking back. Inside that envelope was the settlement. $280,000. Blood money, if I'm honest. I traded 6 years of my life for it, 6 years of building him up while he chipped me down. I could still hear his voice in court. Erin was never really involved in the business. She was more emotional support than actual support. Like I hadn't skipped birthdays to balance his books. Like I hadn't talked him down from panic attacks at 3 a.m. before investor meetings. But whatever, the marriage was over. And I had the one thing he never thought I'd get: leverage. I didn't cry that day. I didn't scream. I took the check and drove straight to the bank, then to the quiet little rental I'd found on the edge of Charleston. A single-story cottage with peeling paint and a front porch swing that whined like it had secrets. I sat on that swing every night for a week, staring out at the Spanish moss hanging from the trees, wondering what came next. That's when Tessa showed up. She always knew when I was unraveling, like she had a sixth sense for my lowest points. My big sister, my childhood hero, the one who held my hair back through every flu, breakup, and spiral. "Move over," she said, nudging me on the swing. She dropped 2 paper bags between us, Thai takeout and a bottle of red wine. "This porch has main character energy, you need it." We didn't talk about the divorce. We didn't have to. She just curled her legs under her and told me about a new project she'd been dreaming of, a jewelry brand. "But not just jewelry," she said, eyes lighting up. "Stories you can wear, every piece rooted in healing, ancestry, power." "Sounds like therapy for your collarbone," I joked. But I was already in love with the idea. We talked until the bottle was empty and the moon hung low. She showed me sketches, rough, uneven, brilliant. Cuffs inspired by our grandmother's wedding band, pendants shaped like the river rocks we collected as kids. "I want it to feel like home," she said, "but also like armor." I nodded. I got it. She was always the dreamer, I was the planner. "You'll need branding," I said, "and a site, probably a launch budget." Her eyes sparkled. "I was hoping you'd say that." She never asked directly. She never had to. The next morning, I transferred $80,000 from my settlement into her account. I told myself it was a loan. Told myself she'd pay it back the moment the business took off. Told myself I was finally doing something good with money born out of betrayal. She called the company Lineage. Said it sounded like bloodlines and strength, like history you could wear. And I was proud, stupidly proud. I designed her logo. Set up the Shopify store. Wrote her about Paige. It read, "Founded by a sister for sisters, jewelry that speaks in heirlooms and heals in silver." It was the best writing I'd done in years. She told everyone I was her silent partner. But in private we were loud. Laughter, late-night calls, text threads full of design drafts and supplier drama. She sent me her first piece, a choker made of braided gold and garnet. "For when your voice feels trapped," the note read. "Wear this until it doesn't." I cried and wore it every day. For 3 months, it felt like we were rebuilding something, not just her company, but our sisterhood. After years of growing apart, we were entwined again, like the vines on Mom's old garden fence. Then came the event. A local showcase for artisan entrepreneurs. She told me to meet her there. "You'll finally see it all live," she said. I walked in wearing my garnet choker, proud as hell. And then I saw the placard. Founder and CEO, Tessa Malden. No mention of me. Not in the brochure. Not in the booth display. Not even in the brand origin story written across the backdrop, which read, "Tessa started Lineage with a vision from her own healing journey, fueled by her passion and personal funds." Personal funds. I felt my stomach drop. I waited until the crowd thinned, then pulled her aside. Tessa, what the hell? She blinked. What do you mean? You erased me from all of it. Her face tightened. Aaron, it's complicated. Investors don't like messy stories. Divorce money isn't sexy. I didn't give you blood money so you could sanitize me. She crossed her arms. You said you didn't want credit. You said it was a gift. I said it was a loan. She looked away. And in that silence I saw the truth. She never intended to pay me back. Because to her, I wasn't a partner. I was a bank account with a broken heart. The night after the showcase, I sat on my front steps with my laptop glowing in my lap, heart thudding like a war drum. I scrolled through my bank app, my hand trembling as I tapped through the transactions. The original transfer, $80,000. Then another, $25,000 a month later, a Venmo request she labeled supplier float. Another $13,400, branding upgrades. One more, $4,996.32, prototype mold shipping from Italy. It didn't stop. $7,100. $12,000. $8,600. Over and over again. Until the total drained was just under $280,000. Every penny of my settlement. Gone. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I texted. Left 2 voicemails. Then finally I wrote. If you don't talk to me tonight, I'll assume this was theft. She called 2 minutes later. Aaron, she said, breathless like she'd been crying, don't use that word. What would you call it? I asked. I didn't steal it. You were helping me. You believed in this, you said. I said loan. You said partnership. I never said drain me dry and pretend I didn't exist. Silence. Then she tried again. It wasn't malicious, she whispered. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I didn't know how to build it without you, but then it started working and people started paying attention and I panicked. Panicked into pretending I didn't exist. You've always had more room to fail, she snapped. That stopped me cold. What? You had a husband, you had support, people wanted to help you. I was just the messy little sister with debt and a dream and no credit score. You got the divorce money, you were starting fresh. My mouth hung open. You think this is about fairness? I think you never really saw me as an equal, just someone you could rescue. I laughed, bitter and stunned. You asked for rescuing. I asked for belief. You got both. You got my belief, my money, my name on every file, my designs, my writing, my silence. You got everything and you spit on it. I didn't spit on it, she yelled, finally breaking. I just didn't want to need you anymore. You didn't want to need me, so you took everything I had. I didn't think it would go this far. Yeah, neither did I. We both fell silent. I stared out at the street, a dog barking somewhere in the distance, my neighbor's porch light flickering like a failing heartbeat. Tessa, I said quietly, I'm going to need it back. She exhaled, I don't have it. All of it. I used it, inventory, manufacturing. I paid a designer in New York, rented a showroom space in Asheville. I hired 2 assistants. It's all tied up in lineage now. Tied up in a business that doesn't even have my name on it. Her voice broke. I didn't mean for it to end like this. I nodded more to myself than to her. It hasn't ended yet. And I hung up. The next day I booked a meeting with a financial advisor. Not just for damage control, for documentation, for strategy. Her name was Jewel, a sharp, serene woman with silver braids and eyes like stone. I handed her the bank statements, told her the story, showed her the branding files I'd made, the logo drafts, the design sketches that Tessa had published under her own name. She clicked through the folders, quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You don't need revenge, you need receipts." And that's what we built. I filed a provisional claim with a commercial mediator, alleging fraudulent misappropriation of funds. Jewel helped me track every transfer from my account, every file tied to my name. She even traced the early supplier contracts Tessa had forged, and yes, forged was the word with my name on them. Digital signatures I never gave. Meanwhile, I watched lineage grow. On Instagram. In boutique newsletters. on influencers' necks. I watched my words, the ones I wrote on her about page, quoted like scripture under her name. And each time, it felt like losing my voice all over again. So I made a choice. I would take it back. Not with rage. With the truth. I served her the papers on a Tuesday. Not because I wanted to ruin her week. Because I wanted to finally reclaim mine. The civil suit went out through my lawyer, Alana Byans, a surgical, steel-spined legal mind who wore navy blazers like armor and carried truth like a blade. When we first met in her office off Broad Street, she didn't ask me how I felt. She asked me what I wanted. I want my name back, I said. Alana nodded, then let's go get it. The legal complaint was clear. Misappropriation of personal funds, fraudulent representation, unauthorized use of intellectual property, and breach of verbal contract. We attached screenshots, statements, shared files. I watched it all come together like the most excruciatingly detailed scrapbook. Every betrayal, every silence, every time she wrote "we" in a text and "I" on a brochure. Tessa responded with one sentence through her attorney. This is a tantrum dressed up in legalese. It made me laugh. Out loud. Because if a tantrum looked like spreadsheets, court filings, notarized affidavits, and branding decks filed with timestamps, then sure. I was throwing the most meticulous tantrum South Carolina had ever seen. But deep down, I was still afraid. Afraid of how far she'd go. Afraid that people, our family, our old friends, would think I was the greedy one. The bitter divorcee, the jealous little sister trying to sabotage success. But Alana looked me in the eye one afternoon and said, "You're not seeking punishment, you're demanding credit. Those are not the same." The day the suit became public, I sat in my car outside the courthouse and scrolled through my phone. The news hadn't hit the press yet, but Lineage's social media had already gone dark. No new posts. Comments disabled. Silence. I got a text from Tessa. "Tessa, you really want this to be what defines us?" I stared at the message, fingers hovering above the screen. I could feel the old guilt rise up, the one she'd always used like a marionette string, pulling at my loyalty, at my hope that one day she'd just get it. But she never had. And she wouldn't now. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new app. And I filed a trademark. Lineage Studio. Same soul, new direction. Under my name. A week later, I hosted a dinner at my cottage, just 6 women, all creatives, all survivors of creative theft. One had been cut out of her fashion brand by a college roommate. Another had her poetry turned into a profitable coaching program by her former best friend. We drank wine. We passed around journals. And we wrote one truth each on a scrap of paper, folded it, and burned them in a ceramic bowl in the middle of the table. Mine said, "I am not an accessory to her origin story." The flames ate the paper in seconds. And I felt lighter. After they left, I walked out to my porch swing, barefoot with my laptop. And I opened a blank page. How my sister spent my divorce settlement to fund her dream, and why I took my name back. That was the title. And that was how it started. I didn't know then that it would go viral. I just knew I wasn't going to stay silent while someone else wore my grief like glitter. The mediation room smelled like lemons and ink. It was colder than I expected, air-conditioned like a meat locker, as if chilling the room could suppress the heat of accusation. I wore a navy wrap dress and heels I hadn't touched since the divorce hearing. Tessa came in wearing pale linen, sandals, and a gold cuff from her collection, the Clarity Drop. Ironic. She smiled when she saw me, a tight, polished thing that didn't touch her eyes. "Hey, stranger," she said, like we were bumping into each other at brunch. I didn't respond. Alana sat beside me, calm as stone. She set a folder on the table and opened it with deliberate grace, revealing our opening statement and evidence. The mediator, a gray-haired woman named Belinda with the quiet presence of a retired judge, invited us to begin. Tessa's lawyer went first. He framed the whole thing like a misunderstanding, said I had given the money freely, that I was supportive and involved voluntarily, that no written contract existed, no official loan terms. He emphasized how much Lineage had grown, how it was a female-founded success story, how Tessa had poured her heart into this venture. I listened without blinking. Then it was our turn. Alana spoke first, methodical and direct. She passed Belinda a USB drive and a printed binder. Inside, time-stamped emails, transfer confirmations, collaborative design documents, the original pitch deck with my name in the header. Messages where Tessa acknowledged it was a loan and promised equity once the dust settles. Then she turned it over to me. Erin, would you like to explain the emotional impact this has had on you? I looked at Tessa. I hadn't really looked at her since this all began. Same hazel eyes. Same smirk she used to wear when we'd sneak Oreos before dinner as kids. But now it looked brittle. Like someone wearing their own reflection. I gave you that money, I said, my voice steady, because I believed in you, because I wanted you to have the one thing I didn't have in my marriage, a clean start. I didn't ask for control, just acknowledgement. Tessa shifted in her chair. I built your brand, I continued. I wrote your story, I handed you my heart, and you turned it into content. Belinda watched us both, quiet, patient. Then she asked Tessa if she'd like to respond. Tessa took a long breath. And for the first time I saw it, the crack. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I was finally getting traction, finally feeling seen, and I didn't want the story to be messy. You made me invisible, I said. That's not clean, that's cruel. Tessa's lawyer called for a break. We stepped into separate rooms. In the hallway, she stopped me. Is this really worth destroying everything? I stared at her. You already destroyed it, I said. I'm just walking through the rubble. Back inside, Belinda made her proposal, a buyout. Tessa would return a portion of the funds, whatever remained. I'd receive retroactive credit on early designs and co-founder status. Or we could go to court. I asked to speak to Tessa privately. We stepped into the hallway again. I looked at her. Hard. If you say the words out loud, I said, I'll consider the deal. She frowned. What words? That you took my money, that you used my story, that I wasn't just some background figure you forgot to thank. She hesitated. I used your money, she said slowly, but the story. She couldn't finish. And I knew then she still didn't get it. She thought this was about numbers. She thought this was about ego. It was about memory. Whose story gets told. Whose voice gets credited. Whose grief gets honored. And whose gets edited for brand clarity. I walked back I shut my laptop, turned off my phone, pulled a box from the back of my closet marked Erin's Studio, old stuff. Inside, watercolor palettes dry with time, sketchbooks with warped covers, a roll of linen paper I'd bought after a conference and never used, pencils, scissors, the things I used to touch every day, the proof that once I was the creator. Not the silent partner, not the fundraiser, not the afterthought. I was the originator. I carried the box out to the screened-in porch, opened the windows, and let the late morning sun pour through like honey. And then I started painting. Not perfectly, not with any plan. Just colors. Shapes. Fragments. At first it looked like nothing, a messy swirl of garnet reds and river gray and storm blue. But then I added gold. Thin, splintered veins of gold running through the broken patches like tiny scars of light. I called it inheritance. The name came without thinking. And suddenly I was crying. Not the sharp, angry tears I'd shed in Alana's office. These were older. Softer. They came from the part of me that had always believed in my sister, the child in me who used to sneak into Tessa's room just to be near her, who mimicked her handwriting and borrowed her earrings and wanted to be her, before adulthood turned us into opponents. Before money came between love. That night, I scanned the painting and made it the homepage banner on my own website. A new site. www.Lineage Studio. My name. My art. My story. And beneath the banner, a single sentence. You are allowed to remake what was taken from you. I built the site in a weekend. Uploaded my old design work, my poetry fragments, my photos of Mom's charm bracelet, the one Tessa and I had fought over after the funeral. I titled each photo collection Unfinished Lineages. I launched the page quietly, no ads, no announcement. Just one post on my personal Instagram. I almost forgot I was an artist, but I'm back, and this time no one edits the ending but me. I didn't expect much, but by Sunday night my inbox was full. 37 messages. All from women. Designers. Writers. Co-founders. People who had built someone else's dream and been cut out when it succeeded. They weren't just angry. They were aching. They wanted to reclaim, to reframe, to remember. And I realized something I hadn't said out loud yet. This wasn't just about a lawsuit. This was a movement. On Monday morning, I added a new page to the site. Creative services. Logo repair. Brand rewriting. Origin story reclamation. Memoir ghostwriting. The tagline. Because your voice deserves the front page. When I told Alana, she smiled. Tell me again why you were ever the silent partner, she said. I laughed, really laughed. For the first time in months. Because maybe I hadn't been silent. Maybe I'd just been interrupted. I posted it late on a Tuesday night, not because I was chasing engagement, but because I couldn't sleep. The blog post. The one I'd written in pieces on napkins and receipts in voice notes and therapy sessions. The one that started as a trauma dump and became a timeline, a roadmap, a truth-telling. How my sister used my divorce settlement to launch her jewelry line, and what I took back. It opened with a photograph, me standing barefoot on the porch of my cottage, wearing the garnet choker she gave me, one hand over my heart. And then the words clear, vulnerable, unforgiving. I believed in my sister more than I believed in myself. I gave her my money, my story, my design, my name. She gave me silence. And when I asked for credit, she gave me shame. This is not a revenge post. This is an ownership post of my story, of my worth, of everything I was told to swallow for the sake of family harmony. I didn't name her outright. Didn't post screenshots. Didn't sling mud. I just told the truth. I hit publish at 12:07 a.m. By 7:00 a.m., my email had 243 new notifications. By noon, the post had been shared over 11,000 times. By dinner, it had been picked up by 2 women's magazines and quoted by 3 influencer accounts with healing in their handles. People weren't just clicking. They were commenting. This happened to me. You just told my story. I didn't know we were allowed to talk about this. One message stood out. From a woman named Cameron, a boutique owner in Atlanta. I carried her pieces, lineage, I loved the mission, I didn't know the story wasn't hers. If you ever decide to launch something of your own, I want to be your first stockist. I stared at the message for a long time. The part of me still grieving whispered, don't be petty. The part of me healing whispered, be powerful. So I replied, I'm ready, let's talk. By Thursday, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen since college. My cousin Elise. Aaron, she said without preamble, I just read the blog, I had no idea it went that deep, I'm sorry. I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed. Elise and Tessa had always been close. Childhood summers, college road trips, a friendship I envied more than I admitted. You believed her, I said. I did, she admitted, but I never asked questions, I just assumed you didn't want credit, she said you were stepping back to heal. I laughed. Funny how silence becomes spin. There was a long pause. Then Elise said, I'm proud of you. And if you ever want help getting your own collection off the ground, I still have that connection at Wishbone Gallery. My heart thudded. A door was opening. One that hadn't just been locked, I didn't even know it existed. On Friday, Tessa posted a statement. 3 paragraphs on Instagram. Polished. Neutral. Emotionally evasive. Every family has complicated stories. I am proud of what I built. I regret the pain caused. I wish Aaron nothing but healing and light. No apology. No ownership. But the comments said it all. Is this your sister's story? Why didn't you tag her? It's not healing if you erase people. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth had already outrun the shame. That night I took off the garnet choker and laid it in a box marked archive. I wasn't erasing it. I was retiring it. Because I didn't need reminders anymore. I was the reminder. Every day I woke up and claimed my own story, I was living proof that silence doesn't win, that erasure isn't the end. And somewhere between the hate DMs and the love notes, I knew. This wasn't just a story. It was a signal. To every woman who had been quietly cut out of something she helped build. To every artist whose art got signed by someone else. To every sister who loved too deeply and got rewritten in return. I was one of them. And now, I was also a mirror. The envelope arrived in early spring. Cream cardstock gold trim, her handwriting on the front. I hadn't seen her script in months, not since the holidays before everything fell apart when she mailed me a card with a silver bracelet and the words "To New Beginnings." That was before I learned those beginnings were built with my money. This time the envelope didn't hold a trinket. It held a check. $112,000. A typed letter signed by her attorney. And a post-it. Scrawled in her handwriting, "Let's just be done, I'm tired, Aaron." I held the check like it was burning me. It wasn't just that it was less than what she owed. It was what it meant that she thought this was about restitution, numbers, math. It never had been. I called Alana. She picked up on the second ring. "She wants to buy me off," I said. "She's trying to close the chapter," Alana replied evenly, "but the pen's still in your hand." "Do I take it?" "That depends. Do you want to be paid or heard?" That night I lit every candle in my house. Opened every window. Made a cup of ginger tea and curled up on my couch with the check and the letter, reading them again under soft yellow light. The letter used phrases like amicable closure and avoiding protracted litigation. It referenced emotional miscommunications and financial discrepancies. Not theft. Not betrayal. Just misunderstandings. She wanted me to sign a mutual NDA and drop the case in exchange for that partial sum. It would all go away. No court date, no more headlines, no more late-night stomach knots. I could take the money, buy a beach trip, and pretend I wasn't still bleeding. Instead, I pulled out a notebook. And I wrote, "I am not a cautionary tale, I am not a footnote, I am the author." I tore the check in half. Then again. And again. Until the pieces were confetti in my lap. Then I called Alana. "Tell her we're going to trial," I said. Alana didn't ask if I was sure. She just said, "I'll prepare the next round of filings." And I knew no matter what happened in court, I had already won something bigger. I had become someone who wouldn't be bought. The next day I posted a video. Me. No filters. No music. Just me in my kitchen in a soft gray sweater, the windows behind me glowing with morning sun. I looked into the camera and said, "Some people think healing looks like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like litigation. And sometimes it looks like no longer keeping quiet so someone else can stay comfortable." That video got 2.1 million views in 3 days. But the real win. A handwritten letter arrived from an artist in Milwaukee. Inside was a pendant she'd made, a hammered silver coin with the words, "Loyalty shouldn't be a liability." Underneath a note, "You made me remember that I'm not crazy, that my instincts matter, that I'm allowed to say no more. Wear this when the courtroom feels cold, we're all behind you." I cried on my porch. Ugly shaking sobs. Because I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every woman who had ever smiled through erasure. The courtroom wasn't glamorous. No rich mahogany paneling, no dramatic lighting, just beige walls, uncomfortable chairs, and a judge who looked like she'd heard every excuse under the sun and had long run out of patience. I wore navy again. Not because it was slimming or formal, but because that's what I wore the day I realized I had lost everything. And this time, I wanted it to be the outfit I wore when I reclaimed it. Tessa arrived 10 minutes late. Hair flat-ironed. Outfit crisp. Makeup on point. She looked like the version of herself I once admired, the one who charmed rooms and melted resistance with that soft, honey-sweet voice. But when she sat across from me, our eyes met for the first time in months. And for a second, I saw something new behind her lashes. Not guilt. Not fear. Emptiness. As if she knew she might already have lost. The court clerk called the case, Aaron Calloway versus Tessa Grant, Civil Action Number 192109. My name. Said out loud. In full. For the record. Our side presented first. Alana opened with precision. She didn't perform. She didn't dramatize. She simply told the truth. That I'd received a $410,000 divorce settlement. That $280,000 of it had been transferred to Lineage's founding expenses under vague verbal agreements. That designs, branding, and files tied to my original IP had been used to establish the company without attribution. That no formal contract existed, and yet the digital paper trail was clear. She clicked through slides. Emails with timestamps. Sketches with metadata and my name. Text messages from Tessa referencing our dream and your idea is my hustle. Then the bank transactions. Page after page. Transfer after transfer. Until the final tally flashed on screen. $278,945.11. I looked at the number. And I felt nothing. Just breath. Steady. Calm. Like the air after a long storm. Tessa's lawyer opened by saying this was a story of two sisters, two dreamers, and a shared misunderstanding. He called me supportive, generous, inspired. He called her driven, creative, overwhelmed. He used words like miscommunication, lack of documentation, and collaborative ambiguity. He never used the word stolen. Not once. When Tessa took the stand, she painted herself like a little sister just trying to keep up. Said I'd offered support during a painful chapter and that she'd assumed the funds were unconditional. She said she never wanted it to come to this. That she still loves me. That this was a family matter, not a courtroom issue. I clenched my hands under the table. Not out of anger. Out of restraint. Because that was the story she was telling. That love was enough to excuse silence, erasure, theft. Then it was my turn. I walked slowly to the stand. Hands steady. Heart pounding. I took the oath. Sat down. And I told my story. I talked about the night she came to me crying after my divorce, about the hopes we whispered over wine and the late nights editing pitch decks together. I spoke about what it felt like to see my work posted under someone else's name. The betrayal. The gaslighting. The erasure of my creative DNA from the very thing I'd helped birth. And I said something I hadn't planned to say. I looked at Tessa and I said, "You didn't just take my money, you took my reflection, you made me doubt my own memory of what we built. And I let you because I wanted to be loved more than I wanted to be respected. But now I want both, and I deserve both." The courtroom was silent. No one moved. Not even the judge. Then Alana asked her final question. "Aaron, what do you want from this case?" I didn't hesitate. I want my voice back, I want credit, I want acknowledgement, and I want the next woman who gets erased to know she's not crazy, she's just not silent anymore. The judge ruled 2 weeks later. In my favor. Restitution $178,000, the remaining value Tessa still held. Attribution rights, my name to be added to Lineage's founding credits. A public acknowledgement on the company's site. And best of all, full rights to launch my own brand under any name I chose. I stood in my kitchen with the email pulled up on my laptop, shaking as I read the words twice, 3 times, then I sat down on the floor and cried. Not for her. For me. Because I had done the impossible. I had survived the theft of my story. And rewritten the ending anyway. The day I launched my jewelry line was nothing like I imagined, and everything I needed it to be. There was no press conference. No champagne. No rented venue with dried eucalyptus and lavender hors d'oeuvres. Just me. In my living room. Laptop open. Soft jazz playing. And a mug of peppermint tea trembling in my hand. I hovered over the publish site button for a long time. I thought of everything it had taken to get here, the wreckage, the silence, the days I couldn't get out of bed, the courtroom, the blogs, the tears I buried in the corners of every conference call. And then I clicked. Lineagra. My name, my history, my reimagination. The tagline read, "Jewelry for women reclaiming their voice, one piece at a time." My first collection was called The Unforgotten. Each piece named after a part of my story. Divorce doesn't mean disappear, a thick silver ring etched with break lines and gold thread. Inheritance, a raw garnet pendant with a cracked golden frame. Voiceprint, gold hoops stamped with waveform patterns from my courtroom testimony. The one that sold out first. Silent no more. A choker. Steel blue velvet. 3 dangling gold charms, one blank, one broken, one engraved with a single word, mine. Within 48 hours we were trending. Not viral. Something deeper. Women didn't just want to buy the pieces. They wanted to wear the healing. My inbox flooded with orders, sure, but also stories. From sisters, daughters, mothers, estranged best friends. People who had co-founded businesses, co-written songs, co-parented ideas, only to be erased in the final edit. They didn't want revenge. They wanted to be seen. To be remembered. To wear a necklace that said, "This was mine and I still carry it with pride." Elise called me crying. I wore Inheritance to dinner and my boss asked where I got it. I told her your story. She teared up. "Aaron, you're doing something real." I laughed. Not because I doubted it. Because I'd almost given it all away. Because for so long, I thought being the nice one meant swallowing my grief whole so others didn't choke on their guilt. But now I was feeding people truth and they were starving for it. One night, I got a DM from a former client I hadn't heard from in 5 years. She said, "I didn't know you were behind the early Lineage brand. I loved those pieces. I always thought they had your fingerprints." I wrote back. They did, and now the signature matches. Tessa never contacted me again. No apology. No flowers. No final olive branch. Just silence. But this time, it was mine. The kind that feels like peace. The kind that holds space instead of swallowing it. The kind of silence you earn after telling your truth so loudly it echoes in other women's throats. And as I packed orders, replied to messages, and signed every thank you card with my full name, I knew. This wasn't the end. This was the origin. Not just of Linigura. Of me. The version who chose herself. Out loud. With receipts. And earrings to match. The 1-year mark came quietly. No anniversary alert. No courtroom flashbacks. Just a morning walk past the old cafe we used to love, the one with the rosemary scones and lopsided outdoor chairs. The place where she first pitched me Lineage, napkin sketches between latte sips, dreams sketched in between sips of oat milk and optimism. I paused in front of the window. The table we once sat at was gone. Replaced by a new couch, velvet green, sleek, stylish. Like the world kept moving, no matter how shattered I once felt. And it hit me, I hadn't cried over her in months. Not since the launch. Not since Linigura became more than a product, a community. We haven't spoken since the court ruling. She never sent a text. Never emailed. Never showed up at my door to say, "You were right and I'm sorry." And I stopped waiting for it. Stopped checking her Instagram. Stopped wondering if she still wore my designs or called them original. I let her go. Not out of hate, but out of honor. Because holding on was costing me more than she ever stole. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. Some sisters don't find their way back. And that's okay. I don't need a neat bow. I don't need a tearful hug in a therapist's office or matching necklaces engraved with forgive. What I needed and found was myself. Whole, healed, unhidden. I now host creative recovery retreats weekends for women who have been erased, replaced, overwritten. We sit around fire pits in the Carolina woods, drink black coffee out of ceramic mugs, and tell our stories into the open air. We don't talk about revenge. We talk about remembrance. We design pieces together. One woman embroidered a scarf with the words, "I am still the blueprint." Another carved her initials into a resin pendant, letting the bubbles show. We laugh. We cry. We remember. One afternoon, a woman named Val pulled me aside. She said, "When I found your story, I thought, finally, someone told the truth. But then I saw your jewelry and I thought, finally, someone survived it." I smiled. Because that was it. Survival. Not in the dramatic, scream it on a mountain kind of way. In the quiet, deeply rooted way. The kind that lives in your bones. That whispers you made it not in spite of the break, but because of it. I still wear the pendant from Milwaukee, the one that says, "Loyalty shouldn't be a liability." Sometimes I touch it when I'm nervous. Other times when I'm grateful. But always with pride. Because I was loyal. To her. To the dream. To the silence. Until I realized I was also allowed to be loyal to myself. So no, we haven't spoken. But I've spoken louder than ever before. To the world. To my clients. To the little girl inside me who used to draw necklaces on napkins and hope someone noticed. Now, she wears her own name. Edged. Stamped. Woven into gold.